Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining to our Growth Over Grades podcast, where we talk about education ideas and topics that matter most to our Spaces EDU educator community. At the beginning of each new episode, I'd like to feature an amazing educator in our community. This week, I want to give a shout out to one of our guests who's actually in the Spaces EDU educator community, and her name is Nicole Biscotti. And before this current school year started, she shared an idea with me about starting a monthly Zoom chat. We both thought it would be better than a Twitter chat because we could have more in-depth conversations. And that's how we've started. So every month, Spaces EDU pays for coffee, and we meet in a Zoom room for our PLN coffee talk. And it's been as small as 3 of us and as large as 20 of us. It's just such a great way to connect and share about ideas and events that are near and dear to our educator hearts and lives. Thank you, Nicole, for being a leader and starting this PLN coffee talk. Thank you, Spaces EDU educator community, for showing up every month ready to connect. And that is actually how this group of ladies for today's podcast got started. We met up last week for our PLN coffee talk and realized that though we are in different locations, different seasons of our lives, and different ways, and have found different ways into education and serve in different roles, we are all very used to going through change, and that is where we find ourselves today. I want to introduce to you Barbara Bray, Jamilla Fort, Nicole Biscotti, and we are going to talk about our roles and how they matter and have purpose. We also want to give a shout out to our community member, Tammy Mason, who was part of this wonderful conversation but could not join us today. So this conversation takes place during Women's History Month. And I have to say, ladies, that you inspire me so much, and I'm privileged to sit with you here again today. Can you introduce yourself and talk about your background? And we'll go with you first, Barbara.
Oh, thank you so much, Melody. And I hope Nicole can join us. So, yes, I've been in this wonderful world of ed tech, and for many, many years. I actually started long, long, long ago. And as a woman, I actually was involved with the women's consciousness raising movement in the 70s. So I just love the women in my life. I've learned a lot, but I know it's been a fight. And so I try to be there for women. And early on, I fell in love with ed tech, and just it was the best thing ever. So I became an ed tech consultant. I still have my LLC that I started in 97. Computer strategies, that's what it is. So, but, and for that, it just meant the world to me to meet all the women. And in 93, I put on an ed tech women's consortium, and we would meet in retreats all over. And one in particular was in Asilomar, California, where we spent 3 days just talking about all the terrible things happening to women and why we need to change it. And it was just so wonderful. And we're all still friends today. It's amazing how those friendships matter. And so I'm at a point now in my life where I try to be an advocate. What I do is I write a lot. I've written 3 books, and my last book came from my podcasts because it was all about the stories, and the stories matter to me so much. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about that later, but because I've been in this world so long, I can just go on and on. So I'd like to hear more from some of the others here.
Yeah, no, we're going to get into your history. You have a rich history, and that's one of the things that we got to talk about last week. It's such a privilege to be able to talk with somebody that has, been a part of the change in society and in education. So, Barbara, it is amazing for you to be here today. We're definitely going to get into your story. And Nicole is listening. So, Nicole, when you're ready, just technology issues, we will pull you back in. But yes, let's go to our next guest, Jamilla Fort. She is amazing, and we got to meet her last week for the first time. How are you doing? And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, guys, I'm Jamilla Fort, like Melody said, and I also, really feel privileged to be here. I had missed our the first PLN chat that I got invited to a couple of weeks ago, the month before, and I was like, gosh, I have to make the next one, and I'm so happy that I remembered to do so because I had such a great conversation. It's so nice to sit in spaces with not only like-minded folk, but people who are across the country who are like-minded and who are all in important sectors of the work that we do, right? We're all actually doing very different things, but it all comes together for that same vision. And so that's what I really loved about being at that chat and, continuing to do so each month. And so again, I appreciate you guys for having me. But a little bit about my background. So I'm from a very small town in upstate New York. I do know how to milk a cow. I do know how to fish and pitch a tent. And but I spent, what was that, like 23 years of my life in Cortland in the upstate New York region. I attended State University at New York, the Crane School of Music for undergrad. I had prospects of being this like life-changing opera singer. Got to school and was like, okay, no, I think I'll just go to Broadway. And then after that, I was like, this probably is not even any of the plan. I happened to, and I'll get into this story a little more later, I happened to nanny for the superintendent of New York City schools at the time, which was Cami Anderson. And she really kind of changed my perspective. And honestly, my entire life around like impact on children, I thought that music was such an impact on me as a child and me wanting to give that back and save students, self-worth and like their grades and like their meaningful time at school and to know that they, could have this career in arts as well and do what they love. But yeah, Cami came in and she's just like, if you want to make a difference in students' lives, you need to go in the inner city, be a fantastic teacher, be an even better leader, and you can do what, I do by my age as well. So that's really stuck in my head. I applied for a program called Urban Teachers, and they are centered around Baltimore and DC. I chose to be in Baltimore. So I've actually been in Baltimore for the last 10 years of my career. Wow. As I started out as the worst teacher on the planet. It's not even self-deprecation. It was bad. My principal, I've been a teacher of the year finalist twice now. And my principal, we always laugh. And I'm like, if anyone caught whiff of those videos, as a matter of fact, Melody, and I'll wrap it up here, but there is a video. We had to do some Doug Lemov techniques our first year of teaching. And we put them on YouTube and I did not mark mine as private. So a couple of years later, someone's like, I've seen you before. And they're like, oh yeah, you were in one of our classes on a YouTube video on what not to do for positive narration. I was like, that video's public. So I was the model of what not to do in the classroom. How ironic is that? So anyway, so Baltimore, primarily 7 years of math and science. And now I am an academic leader at our school. I'm the instructional lead. I'm what's called a multi-classroom lead. I also lead my show, Jamilla Fort. And I'm in New York at my boyfriend's place because I am moving here. I have some great prospects for some jobs here in New York. I just signed the lease for my new apartment from my house. I have to sell my house. But I got a place to live here. And so we're all good. So yes, thank you for letting me share a little bit about myself.
I love it. I have tears in my eyes because, nobody starts out perfect. Thank you for being human and real and telling it like it is. We appreciate that. It makes so much of us feel better because, it's a growth. It's all about growth. That's the growth over grades, right? Even for teachers.
Seriously.
Yes. Nicole, are you there? Can you hear us, Nicole?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We could hear you and it's okay. We're going to just go with technology issues because you are so important. We could hear you. So do you mind telling us a little bit about your amazing background?
Thank you very much. And thank you so much with your patience with my technology issues. I'm really honored to be in space with you guys today. I love all of you. I love being an educator. I'm really proud to be able to be an educator, to be honest with you. So just as a side note, I have kind of cruddy signal issues because I live in Mexico. I teach in Southern California, very Southern California, because I do cross the border every day. And I'm originally from New York City. Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of an allergy thing going on here. So I actually got into education in a very sort of curvy path. I was a single mother of 4 kids. And I had a do-over in life. When everything falls apart, you have a clean slate and you can recreate, right? And I looked back at my life and I realized that what I cared about the most was really education. I had had a language school prior to that, because I've always been very interested in languages and travel and culture. But when I really thought about what I wanted to do with my life, besides being an entrepreneur, because we did have a business before I was separated, but I certainly didn't want the instability of that on my own with 4 kids. What I wanted to dedicate my career time to, I didn't want to do something that didn't matter to me for 40 hours a week. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure that I could do that, because I'm one of these people that you can definitely see my emotions on my face. Mm-hmm. So I thought about it, and I realized, it took a lot of introspection, but I realized that the only thing I cared about enough to really do enthusiastically was education. And it really brought me back to who I am. At my core, what I care about is people finding their purpose and people realizing their potential. That's really what I care about. So I became a teacher at the age of 38 years old in the public school system. I remember my first day of teaching high school Spanish. The night before, I thought, oh dear God, what am I going to do tomorrow with 40 kids? We had 40 kids that year in one of my classes. And my oldest son, Nicholas, was starting high school the same day. My twin girls were starting kindergarten that day. It was August 4th, 2014. It was like the day of the first. And my little one was in preschool. But anyways, I just thought, well, I better go to sleep. And you know what? I'm just going to tell myself it's 40 Nicholases. I can do this. And that's how I approached it. And, it was ups and downs, just like any new teacher. And I think that where my career changed from being a classroom teacher to expanding beyond that was really just finding my voice and being authentic. And being a mother has informed my teaching, and teaching has informed being my mother, because my youngest son has ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder, and then that began to define how I viewed teaching and a lot of other things that we'll probably talk about later on.
Yeah. Well, number one, I just want to say that you all have such rich stories and such amazing backgrounds, and it's incredible. Did any of you go through college and just become a teacher, or is that just like I went straight through? Okay, I'm the only one. So
yeah, the only one. No, this was not a prospect in mind.
Right.
I had a whole other career.
I know. I love that so much, because a lot of times, it'll be people a lot like me. Just, we went right through college, we became educators. But you offer so much more in your backgrounds. And that's why I'm so glad you're here today. And your stories are incredible. I could have a podcast with each of you just talking about how you came into education. But Nicole, what you just shared about how you wanted to fill 40 hours a week was something that really mattered. Gosh, that just got to my heart. And I'm sure everybody that's listening. So we're talking about our roles and how we came into education a little differently. But how does your role in education reflect your story? Or maybe I'm even asking that background. How does your story reflect your role in education? Whichever way you want to answer that.
Who?
I'll
Me?
go. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
hop in on that. So it's really interesting because I guess it was sort of a fib. I originally did go to school. Music education was my major. And like I said, I was going to be a music teacher. And throughout those 4 years at college, I was like, oh, nope, I'm going to be on Broadway. Oh, I want to go to get my master's in pit and choral conducting and just kind of have this performance career. And it's just really interesting because I was going through a lot at home. My mom was a crack cocaine abuser, and it was really difficult to be at home all the time because you didn't know what parent you were going to get, right? So there's this sense of anxiety, like I would stay out the house a lot. I'd be involved in so many programs, overwhelming. Like if I had a plate, it was like a buffet filled with things that I always pile myself onto in these tasks to really, really challenge myself. And so when the opportunity came, my mom had actually kicked me out the house my junior year. And my friend's parents, and it's always the mother figure, has always come through for me. So Margie, my mom kicked me out. She made sure that I had a place to stay at their house. She got me my first apartment. She took me back and forth from college. And she even took me to, when I lived in Jersey City, she took me there as well. And that's where I got that nannying job for the superintendent. And I guess, and call it mommy issues, right? I guess I've always gravitated to really strong women, and not that my mom, given her drug abuse, was not a strong woman. She's the strongest woman I know. That's why I'm so strong. But to have female role models, right? And to really understand my potential as a woman and what that really looked like, because I didn't know what that looked like. I don't know what a successful woman looks like other than what was on TV, or someone who could be compassionate and take a child like me and make sure that their life is great. I had sent Margie a text message like a couple years ago, and I was like, I feel so terrible. I haven't thanked you yet for like what you really did for my life. And she goes, it was really no problem. It was so short and simple. She said it was really no problem. Me and Manny, her husband, she said, we knew you were going to be great, and we just knew that you needed the support to do so. So I really give thanks to that. And when I met Cammie, and she was such an inspiration for being like in the position that she was so young. I think she was 42 or 41 when she got that position. I'm so sorry. We had a little spill.
It's okay.
I like sitting here. My boyfriend's doing an excellent job mitigating. But anyway, and for her to be 42, and I'm like, you lead a district? She goes, yeah, and I change kids' lives like you, and worse, thousands of them every day. So like, it was so inspiring for me. And again, I was like, I'm about to put a bunch of stuff on my plate because this is me, this is how I operate. So that perseverance, that grit, that real passion to give back what people gave to me in these spaces. And I knew that like I have to go and I have to be really good. Cammie said I had to be really good. So I pushed myself to be the best, not for my ego, but to be my best for kids, because if I'm at my best, my kids are at my best. So as I became, a better teacher, I was like antsy in my classroom now, because I'm like, I have all this wealth of knowledge in here. My kids are performing at the top in the district. Now it's time for me to give that back in another level. Here we go, stack on the instructional leadership stuff. So I really wanted to go in now, and what I do is change teachers around, to change these classrooms around, and my impact is that much greater. And so I constantly, again, have this yearning for this mass impact to really, really take what Cammie said and be really good at what I do every time. So I'm this instructional lead. I'm going to push myself to be one of the best ones. And then when I'm not, and I'm a principal, or when I go into district offices, like I'm always going to be striving to be top notch, because my impact can be so great for this really, really important work that I'm really invested in.
I love that. And Nicole even put it in our chat. She quoted you. I'm going to push myself to be the best, not for me and my ego, but for kids. If I'm at my best, my kids will be at their best. And I love that. That is such a great reflection. Thank you so much for sharing. And Nicole, thank you for capturing that. I love it.
Yes. Thank you, Nicole.
I'll jump in. just loving your story, Jamilla. And my whole thing is all about the stories, because I call myself a story weaver now, because I found that when you just reach out and find the stories and how people push themselves and challenge themselves and struggled and didn't give up, and then they became the best they can be, and then they still keep struggling. It just blows me away what I find out, because my whole story, I was a dental hygienist for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I did that mainly. I know, who knew, right? I got great teeth.
You had great teeth. I didn't know.
Yeah. But I did that because my guidance counselor in college said, you're really good in science. You'd be good. They have a new program. Try it. I applied. There were 700 applicants, and I got one of the 18 spots. So I had to take it. So I did that. I loved it. I also began teaching dental hygiene, and then I realized, I really like this. My kids were born, was able to work part-time, started teaching. I got my adult learning credential, I was actually a chapter leader for the young astronauts.
Oh, wow.
Everything I could. I taught GATE. And then when I saw computers, I said, I gotta get those. I got the first one, took it apart, had to put it back together again. And my family's like, what's wrong with mom? Oh my God. And I was the kind that I just needed to know more and more and more. And so I did hygiene and started a business, and it just started growing. And then I think I was 39, and we were modeling our house, and I went outside and didn't see the hole in the deck that the contractors left. And I fell through and broke my leg and my neck. And that's how my role changed, because I was in traction for 4 months and lost the feeling in my arms and had to have 3 vertebrae fused, and it was just awful. But it was like, it's almost like, I got struck by lightning and said, wake up, do what you love. What's the wrong with you? So I just threw it to the wind and left hygiene and just went head first into education. And I don't look back at all. I love everything about it. I love teaching. I became a project manager, wrote grants. I started helping teachers become the best they could be. But I also had kids teams. And I just look back and I think I'm so lucky that I was able to be at that time in my life to wake up, and it was too bad I had to get hurt. I don't want anyone to go through that. So I became a coach to help educators, to help people who are changing careers, so they can also say, wait a minute, if I really love this, if I found that this is my purpose, why am I not doing it? And that's what I've been working on. So my latest book is called Define Your Why. I got that book because of all the stories from my podcast. I have so many people that would say to me, I've never told anyone this. And I'm like, pause. I'm going to put this on the internet. Do you want to tell them? Because it's up to you, And then they would tell me these stories that were so amazing that I just sit there and just in wonder, why aren't they telling their stories? All of us have them. And our stories help others because they realize if you can do it, I can do it. Just like Jamilla, just like you said. And you're beautiful, by the way. Amazing. Your
thank you.
story. Anyway, I could go on, but I'm just so in awe.
I am in awe right now, and I'm so glad that Nicole is back with us. Thank you. And technology is technology. It will be what it will be. And thank you to whoever is watching live. I don't know your name, but they are enjoying the conversations here from California, and they love all of the origin stories. So Nicole, now that you're here with us, do you want to answer and take a shot at how either your story reflects your role in education or your role in education reflects your story, however you want to answer that?
Thank you. So I'm really glad that somebody's here from El Centro, by the way, because that's really close to where I teach. So thank you for being here. So how does my story reflect my role in education? Well, my role in education is my story, actually. So on one hand, I teach, every day, and that's what I do. It's kind of my day job, right? But then to expand on that, I began to have a platform, if you will, really just spontaneously from sharing. And that's where I connected with Melody and then with Barbara and eventually with Jamilla through Kier. And it was just, honestly, just from sharing the things that I was learning and that I was experiencing. Being an educator is a constant state of growth and reflection.
Yes.
You're always growing, you're always reflecting, you're always learning. You cannot stay static. And I think that that's maybe at the core of why I enjoy being an educator. Apart from what I can contribute to others, I'm constantly challenged. And as a mother or as a father, as a parent, it's the same situation. And when my son entered school, my youngest son, well, even preschool, but especially kindergarten, where there's more expectations. Well, I wrote a whole book about this, but he didn't really fit in too well. And it was kind of a disaster. He was expelled or not. He wasn't technically expelled. They were going to expel him and I withdrew him. So that was a big learning process. I had 3 very compliant children who did really well. And then Jason hit the school system, and it was like, boom. So there was a lot of humbling, a lot of learning. And I didn't know anything about ADHD. I didn't know anything about ODD. And because I had already been connecting with educators on Twitter and other social media sources, I guess that my inquiry about what was going on and my learning process and my journey became kind of public. So then what was really surprising for me is that it was resonating with other people, other parents, other educators. And I had no idea. I always felt a little bit inadequate because I had gotten into education later in life. And like when you asked that question about did we go to college for education, I didn't go to college for anything. So I went to college right after high school because that's what like smart kids did, but I was living on my own. So my experience of going to Hunter College in New York City was I went to this place called the Smoke Pit. And if any of my students ever listen to this, don't smoke cigarettes. It's really bad for you. And we went there, and I never made it past there to my classes. I was working 3 jobs. I was isolated. I was depressed. I was lonely. And my friends were there. And like, why go upstairs to class? So, and I didn't even know what I was doing in this place. So I just didn't make it past a semester. And that's all I did for college until I was 28. And I was already a mother and went back to school. So I didn't have, the traditional educational background. My schooling in general had a lot of lapses and gaps and all this from moving and a lot of things that were going on when I was a kid. So I always felt like maybe I was the one that didn't understand special needs kids or some of the issues with Jason. But when I started to realize that other educators really didn't have any education about ADHD, it was both validating and terrifying because I realized that systemically we have an issue. And our issue is that since the 70s, as general educators, we are tasked with educating kids with special needs. And that's definitely the trend. Like we're moving towards more and more of that, right? And yes, I'm so grateful for universal design learning and all these other strategies. Like I teach about whole class accommodations where we can proactively handle different kids' needs. But when we don't have the right lens of looking at kids with special needs and understanding behavior as communication, I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand what the heck was wrong with kids that couldn't sit in their seat and just calm the heck down. And that's a really cruddy thing to say. But I had 3 kids that were very compliant in school. So I didn't understand why other children couldn't behave that way. I behaved that way when I was in school. I mean, the fact that I was abused and terrified, didn't really enter my mind. But my kids weren't. They just were compliant, But I learned so much about kids and behavior and needs. And I thought that I was the only educator that didn't understand. And then I realized that systemically we have an issue with that. So I guess my role in education about educating educators and advocating for the fact that teacher education needs to change. It needs to be expanded. We need to understand it's irresponsible that I am literally teaching kids that have autism, that have ADHD, that have all of these different conditions, trauma, and I've never taken any serious coursework about it, except maybe a few chapters here and there. I've certainly never had any internship with it. I've never done any of my practicum in special ed. I find it to be irresponsible. So that's where my work has become, and that's where my leadership is.
Yeah. I've always wondered, and I'm just going to say this, how when you have to sign off when somebody brings you the IEP that you need to sign and it says, do you need more help in this to be able to, actually do this with your students? And I never checked that I needed more support because I never knew if that was really there. And I was told, by a couple of people, it wasn't really, it was just, it's all about, just making sure that everything is legal. And I agree with you. Like it's a disservice. We aren't trained really how to help our students with different needs. And it's tragic because a lot of those students are, they're struggling even more so than their peers that, might be more compliant. And there's a whole thing about compliance too, that we could get into. And we might need to have another podcast just for all this. But going on with, being female, being a woman leader, having purpose in education, let's move on to how important is female leadership in education? How do you feel like your roles as a woman really makes a difference in education?
Okay, I'll jump in. I feel that I'm at a point in my life because well, every one of my friends are retired, my husband, everyone, but I'm never giving up. And I figured I can say anything because they can't. What are they going to do to me? Really? And so I figured I need to make sure that everybody gets a voice. So I'm that one that helps people and pushes, especially women who feel like, well, I'm not really sure if I should leave. I got the kids, and so then I push them because I did a lot of work on this. I did get training, and I am a coach and a mentor, and I realized when I learned a lot about why, the purpose, and a lot of us aren't living our purpose. A lot of us are doing what we think we should do, or the money, or we're obligated, or the kids. I stayed in hygiene. Now, this is weird, but I stayed in hygiene for 20 years because I thought that my patients needed me. They all loved me and they followed me, and I thought, I can't let them down. I was really miserable. I worked for so many years crying behind my mask when we had to wear masks, behind it was different. And I thought, I left. I'm sitting in traction, and they got another hygienist and they did fine. In fact, they were better than me. And I
Wow.
was like, darn, I thought I was indispensable. And I realized, oh my God, that's what teachers are doing. They're staying in a place where they're not happy. Their purpose doesn't align with with the vision or whatever, the mission statement, or maybe they have a leader who's not supportive. There's all these things that are going on. So I was a mentor at South by Southwest last week,
Mhm.
and I had 5 women at my table, and every single one of them in different positions, some were in education, some not, were in the same issue. They wanted to make an impact, or they might not have been in line with the mission. It was the same
Mhm.
thing, but they were different roles. And that seems to be it. Why do we keep on doing something that is not feeding our soul and helping us become the best we can be, like Jamila said, and doing like what Nicole said, finding that one thing that she's really good at, even if she doesn't train for it? That's the thing. You don't have to be trained, because right now, everything's available for you.
Mhm.
There are so many resources, and I learned from you. I learned from the kids. I learned from everyone.
Mm.
And that's the thing, that we have to value our experience, the amount of work we put in to find out more, how smart we are, but we have to be able to share that. And some people are afraid to. So
Mm.
my job is to do a podcast and get people talking about themselves. I did that with you, Nicole. And I wanted to get, and I'm going to get more people that are on here on. So it's the thing is, all of us have a story. And I think the problem is, women are afraid to tell it. And I'm not going to let them do that.
I love, Barbara, you make an interesting point too in this. Do you think that women are more likely to stay in a role that they're miserable in than like our male peers? Just because we do feel like people need us so much?
It's more of how we were trained. We were trained to be compliant. We were trained to be that. That's why there's so many women in these fields, in nursing and in healthcare fields and caregivers and things like that. That's who we are. And those are the people we need to run our country, because we are smarter. We have more empathy. We're caring. And women are amazing. There are women leaders everywhere. What's wrong with the United States? We need more women. We need more women leading, being superintendents. We need more women doing everything. So I'm going to be keeping fighting. And my family's like, oh, Mom, don't you want to stay home? I go, no.
No, heck no. And can I pick off of a little bit of what Barbara said there at the end? Is I was going to bring up a friend of mine. She's a huge feminist, love her. And she was reading this book many years ago. And I promise I'll find out the book for you guys. But it was basically about kind of the origins of gender roles and all the fallacies that come with it, but some of the truths in it, right? Like, women were born engineered a certain way. As far as like our chemicals are concerned, like you said, Barbara, we are tremendously more empathetic. We are groomed to be matronly. And yes, we can defy all odds, but that's something that's very innate in our gene pool. And so for me, from my perspective on how I grew up with these lack of male role models in my life, I really strive best under the leadership of a woman. And it's the same kind of caveat where they're like, representation matters as far as Black male teachers are concerned, to Black males, but representation really matters in and leadership from females, because again, like you said, we were groomed back in the day. It was like you went to school to be a nurse, or you were a teacher, or you were a stay-at-home mom. You didn't really have anything else. You didn't have any female who was pioneering the way for you. But when you did have a female who came through and pioneered the way for you, you were like, yes, I got this. And then like that's sort of how our history has evolved. And like once you hear about the first female astronaut, you hear, and then all these little girls want to go to school for science. You hear about, you know, the first gold medalists and, you know, gymnastics, you know, for the females. It's just, we empower each other so much, and men can't really empower women in the same way, because it's back to that book and that research is we don't take males, their ego very well. We don't take charge from them very well. And so it's important that when we are trying to make great impacts, that we are led by really strong women. Like, again, even with Cammie, I thought she was and she still definitely is the coolest, you know, district leader ever. And just to be so inspired by her, and just know, like, she'd come home and like beautiful home, just regular, had the most beautiful kid, but she was going out doing bad bitch things. And I was just like, this is awesome. And she's like legitimately making an impact. So even now I look up so much so to Dr. Santelises and Dr. Dabrowski as well. It's just these females that are doing these real empowering things. And it feels better for me as a woman to see that, even though, you know, I've been in this career for over 10 years. I've still got lots of longevity in it, and I'm still continually looking for these role models, especially such as even you guys sitting here right now, you know, and Barbara, all the wonderful things that you've got to do, I'm excited to do in my next 30 years of life. So that for me is why it's so important to have the females, and same with me, you know, inspiring my little girls to do more than just do hair, you know, and to want to be out and get a great job. And, oh, you had a car, your boyfriend didn't buy your car. No, my boyfriend did not buy my car. You could buy your own car too, and you ain't gonna buy your boyfriend's car even though you can afford it. You're not going to, you know. And so I just love that there's all this trickle down thing that's going on constantly between women.
Gosh, I love that. I love that. And I love the shout outs to the women that have made such a difference and impact. And if anybody wants to do that, feel free to take a minute and give them shout outs. I love it.
So if I could just answer as well, I think that it's so important, like Barbara and Jamilla were saying, representation matters a lot. As human beings, I think not only do we relate to women leaders differently, because we certainly do, there are conversations that we can have with women as women that we could never have with men, because we don't have the same comfort level in certain areas, as nice as our men leaders can be to us, but it's just not comfortable on certain levels. We don't have certain shared experiences with them. On the other hand, it's like human beings need to see it to believe it. And I think that when we haven't seen a woman as a powerful leader, or someone with a commanding presence, or someone who's able to project a platform or have confidence in their message, it's hard for a young woman or a woman, even if they're not young, to feel that they can do the same. It needs to be seen. And when we talk about women that have influenced us, I'd like to also give a couple shout outs. So my very first principal, again, I was 38 years old. I'm becoming a high school teacher, right? My first principal was Dr. Wilson. And Dr. Wilson amazes me. Very few people, I would say, actually amaze me. She really amazes me. This lady, first of all, I'm from New York, so I think I'm pretty nice. Like, I really care, but I'm not necessarily like all smiley and kindergarten teacherly, you know? And she's like this kind of lady that's like, she was out there. Our school started at 7:25. The bell rang at 7:25. And you would get on campus by 7 o'clock, and Dr. Wilson was always at the front gate with a huge smile. And you could have gone to a game that lasted far away, and nobody got left there till after 10 o'clock. And she was excited for them, and she would have had her T-shirt on and all of that. And then she would have been by that gate before 7 o'clock with the same smile. I mean, the composure that this woman had was just incredible. I'm not like that. If I get less than 5 hours of sleep, you're getting like, yeah, good morning from me. And that's Like, that's all you're getting, okay? So her composure and just the way she was always so professional was just amazing to me. And in addition to that, because that I really did marvel about that quite a bit, her intelligence. You could speak to her about any area of education, and she was always up on the latest summaries. I mean, the latest, excuse me, studies. I don't know if she had some like, I need to really reach out to her and ask her if she had some like in on some executive summaries of like relevant studies or something, or if this woman just read all night. I'm not sure, but she always knew the recent studies on every topic, it seemed like. So she was just always like sharp, knew her stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and always had the sweetest, most graceful composure. But yet I always felt like I had to sit up a little straighter around her because she was on it. Okay?
Yeah.
She did not miss a trick. Like, she noticed everything. And I really appreciated that about her. And then I think, so I admired her so much. And then she was very encouraging to me. You know, she didn't know this, but I was probably suffering from PTSD from some of the experiences I had left before I separated. And I was the leadership. She let me as a young teacher, you know, a new teacher, be on the leadership council and all this stuff. And she pushed me forward. I was terrified of public speaking, like terrified. Like I would think of the gym as like 4 times bigger and walk in. And my first thought was like, oh, this place is small. But she would put me intentionally in these spaces and have me speak publicly. Like, she pushed me forward and made me really uncomfortable a lot of times. But I thank her for that, because she saw something in me. And I know she never did anything unintentionally. And it was a really great experience just to have had an educator like that and to have worked with her. So she was amazing. We have an assistant. I've been really lucky with the types of principals I've had. I got to work with Natalie Quinones also at Westview. She was great. I heard she's a principal there now. I'm sure she's rocking it. I've heard good things. And then in my current role, I have another assistant principal, Ms. Din, she always understands the kids. And I really admire the fact that she hasn't lost that teacher way of looking at the kids. So like when I go to her with an issue, she doesn't look at it solely as an administrator. She still knows the kids, and she still looks at it like how a teacher would, with a teacher heart.
Yeah.
So I really like to go to her because I feel like she gets it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I just want to give a shout out to my first principal, Lucy Hansen, and my first mentor teacher, Jenna Fry. Yeah. You know Lucy?
Yes. Is she down in Palm Springs kind of area? No, maybe it's a different one.
It might be. We'll talk. Maybe you do know her. Yeah. But just taking a chance on me, hiring me, and Jenna, I had a great mentor teacher, and I think that's why I survived my first year so well, because I had some adversity that I was going through, but they still speak into my life and just encourage me, and even having hard conversations. I will say that having a mentor teacher, especially a woman mentor teacher, being able to go to her about basically everything that a woman goes through, but she had some hard conversations with me about, like, I was pretty moody, you know, and I remember that's just one example of, you know, Melody, you're pretty moody. And I just thought, you know what, she's right. And I needed to kind of temper that, you know, not be so moody, because it affected, you know, my coworkers, it affected my students. And I remember that was just a hard conversation that she spoke to me with, you know, not like she was coming at me, but just helping me to be better as a person and as an educator. And just one example of how she's spoken to my life. But I just want to definitely recognize them. But go ahead. What were you going to say, Barbara?
Oh, well, I would just, you know, and you mentioned her name. I don't know if it's the same person, but she's a principal near the Palm Springs area. So I don't know if that's the same one, but she was just amazing. But I didn't mention that my mother was, she was a real good role model, and she was the first entrepreneur. She made her job as a courtroom artist at the McCarthy trials, by the way.
Wow.
And then when we moved to California, she ended up working for Associated Press, and she did all the big trials. But what she also did was told me, you can do anything. You know, when I was doing hygiene and I wasn't happy, she said, you can change. You can change, and she would just push me and then teach me things. So anybody can be that female leader. Anyone who is got that heart and that soul of, I mean, being an entrepreneur, it was amazing. She did that in the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
And so watching her take risks and do things made me say, maybe I can do it. But it took me a long time, but I ended up doing it. But it's like, you never know who's going to come in that door and open it up for you and say, look, there's a whole world out there. Go for it.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what, Barbara, when you say that about anyone can be a leader, that's something I wanted to say earlier, actually. So I actually completed my education to be a principal, and I've also decided that I don't want to be a principal right now. Well, I'm really more, my kids, I have 3 kids my twins are going to enter high school next year. Jason's going to be the year behind him. And I just feel like this is the time of my life that I want to be more focused on that. I have like a bunch of half-written books and projects going on. And so it's not the time right now for me to do that. And I don't know that it ever will be. I'm not sure. But I also think that leadership from where you're standing is really important. And when you talked about leaders like that, one of the half-written books is about my grandmother who just finished elementary school. She's a tremendous leader. And 2 more shout outs that I can't even believe I didn't say is, first of all, talking about mentor teachers. So I've never said this publicly, but my mentor teacher was Dr. Terry Thompson. And few people have impacted me so much professionally and personally as she has. She's a dear friend of mine. And I don't know if she's going to get mad at me for saying this, but we actually instantly became friends. But for the 2 or 3 years, whatever the program was she was my mentor, we kind of were like secret friends because I didn't want her to be perceived as like unprofessional or something. So it was almost like we were dating at work. So we didn't come out as friends. She was very professional, for anybody listening. Yeah. But my idea, I didn't want anyone to think that she was being unprofessional because she was my friend. We couldn't help it, okay? And years later, we're still really good friends, okay? But we just had an instant connection, and she believed in me when my self-esteem when I entered teaching was at the lowest. It just brings tears. I was at the lowest. And she saw me. Her and Dr. Wilson saw me. And I just am so grateful for that because she's brilliant. So her seeing me was just amazing, and her wisdom and pouring into me. And the other person I can't believe I didn't think to shout out is Barbara Bray, because few people know this, but fun fact, out of all the half-written books I have, I would not have finished my book if it weren't for Barbara Bray focusing me and saying, Nicole, this book has to be written while Jason's still young. You need to get it done.
Well, you said it was either your grandmother or Jason, and I said Jason because he's 9 at that time, and I said he's going to grow, and if he wants to do this with you, what a powerful book, and it is.
It is such a powerful book, and I will put it in the show notes. All your books, both of you. Yes.
Wow, that was just amazing. Thank you. I feel that what happens with me, and I don't know what happened to Jamilla. I hope she comes back.
She'll be right.
Okay. I just feel that I'm mentored every time I have these conversations. I feel like I've learned, like when you started sharing names, I sat there and thinking, why didn't I do that? I'm just thinking there's so many people who guided me and helped me, and mostly women. So I just, we could go on and on and on about that, but I just feel like I'm learning so much just from listening.
Yes. And I'm going to pull Jamilla back up. Yay. Okay. Technology. Hey Jamilla, glad to see you back. It's okay. This is technology. I love it. But we are coming to our close, unless Jamilla, if you didn't answer this and you want to, before we move on, how important is female leadership and education? If you had anything you wanted to share.
Oh, any additional aspects from before?
And you were able to share about, you led this. I'm so glad. I was afraid that I didn't have your voice in that. But is there any women that you thought of that we were giving some shout outs, and I don't want to keep that from you as well?
Yeah, as far as and even I had mentioned some real, high impact leaders, superintendents, whatnot, CAOs, whatnot. but also honestly just my own principal. You know, she is a newer age principal in the sense that she's not of the old school. She's the boss, everything super professional and pristine. And for someone like me who struggles and has struggled my whole life with grappling of like, how do I be myself, energetic, charismatic, loud, obnoxious, hilarious? How do I bring that into my work? That's also so it's not seen as childish, immature, you know, overbearing and whatnot. And my principal does a really good job doing that herself. And she also does a good job with like giving me the feedback to do so. You know, again, it's just like in the same way that Robert DiAngelo might say that, you know, white people are best teaching white people, other white people about their privilege. It's kind of the same with women. And we talked about that earlier about it doesn't sound the same when you're having a conversation from your father than with your mother, or from your male boss to your female boss, because we have an understanding of how we are. And I think that we really gravitate towards like at least I do. I gravitate towards women leaders. I'm really inspired. I feel understood by it. And so I do also want to personally give out a shout out also to Miss Manning in education. So I just feel like over my last 10 years, I've had mostly all female leadership. And I can't say that without a doubt that isn't part of the reasons why, you know, I felt like I could be so successful, just because in my world of education, it's very dominated by women. So it made me comfortable to feel like, oh yeah, we dominate this thing here. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, we are coming to the end. You guys are amazing. I could be with you all day. I could do this for a couple of hours. I want to say, if you want to be a part of our conversation, please join our PLN coffee talk that we do every month. It is such an amazing time to share with one another, and it's for women and men. But before we go today, I want to ask you, and anybody can go first, but what is one piece of wisdom that you like to share with other educators? Just be something on your mind or in your heart that, you know, you just want to just put words to it, put it out into the universe.
I'm going to just jump in because I think everyone has a story. Please share your story. What I found is I was renting my guidance counselor's story for so long. I didn't know my purpose. I ended up having to write about it so I could help others share theirs. Find your story, what story you want out there. So you tell it first. You tell it and share it and scream it out to the world that who you are and your purpose to be here. That's my little piece of wisdom.
Love it. Anybody else?
If I could just
yeah.
tell on that.
You want
I want to.
Oh,
go ahead,
Nicole.
Jamilla.
You're like batter that hits at home. You're like that. Yeah, I was gonna say. So Nicole, I figured you want to be our fourth batter home and get us all the home plate. So I'll share my little tidbit of wisdom. I think that this is education. Jennifer Green, the founder of Urban Teachers, once said that this is terrifically hard work. It is some of the most terrific and rewarding work there is out there. You can see your impact almost within a month. All right. And then of course the trajectory of years, but this is really hard burden. And I feel like as women, we truly, truly, truly need to empower each other, because we are the ones leading this work, even if like we have that inequity in upper education where it might be male dominant, but this is work that needs to be run by women because of all of those factors. Come with a woman spirit, particularly in the workplace, because I know for me that's made a huge difference in my progress. It's made a huge difference in my drive. I feel very, very supported, and it's very comforting.
Okay. All right, Jamilla, I don't know if you can hear me, but you've cut out and froze. I hate that, but the technology will be technology.
Wow.
Nicole, what would you like to share?
I would like to just add to both of what Barbara and Jamilla said. To add to what Jamilla said, there is something so powerful and beautiful about women uplifting women. We're so good at doing that for people. And when we do it for each other, it's just amazing. Beautiful things happen. And I also want to say, when we're talking about leading from where you're standing, we can never forget that leadership happens in the classroom.
Right.
Impactful leadership happens in the classroom. If you teach high school, you're leading 150 plus kids every day. And the other thing I want to say about what Barbara was saying is that we do have to share our stories. It's so important. When we raise our authentic voices, I shared with you guys how vulnerable I was entering education, and especially when I was having all these issues with my son and all of this. But raising my voice was so powerful for so many people. When you raise your authentic voice, it resonates with people. And it resonates with the people that need to hear it.
That's right.
And there's power in that sharing. There's power for you, and there's power for other people. And those are the stories that need to be shared.
Yeah, mic drop moment. Thank you for that. Amazing. This has been such an incredible conversation today. We went a little bit longer than normal, but that's okay because we had, 3 incredible women today instead of just one guest. Thank you so much, Barbara, Nicole, and Jamilla, for coming on today and sharing your stories, and also just for the impact that you are making every day in your community, where you live, and your school community where you work. You just such an impact. I am so grateful to know each and every one of you. In the show's notes, I will definitely put all the ways that people can connect with you on Twitter, on social media, your different companies that you have, or your books that you've written. It's just such a privilege to sit here and talk with you all today. And again, I just want to welcome anybody who wants to be a part of this community. You are invited, and we hope that you will join us. All right, everybody, take care. Happy Women's History Month. We are an incredible community of women, and take care. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you.